Welcome to our webinar today. We are going to talk about a case study of Merck's global content collaboration. But first, before we get started, I'd like to just go over a couple of logistics. If you have any questions, you can use the questions pane to enter your questions. Also, if you'd like to view the presentation in full screen mode, you can use the icon in the little toolbar up in the GoToMeeting pane. Also, the phone number is listed. If you're having trouble with the audio, you can switch over to the phone. I'm Suzanne Mescan with Vasont Systems, and we are the developer of the Vasont Content Management System. We have clients using our system for all sorts of things, including technical documentation, training materials, and reference publishing materials. We've been around since 1992 when we first started developing content management systems. Our company has actually been around since 1950, so we've had quite a background in the publishing area, working with publishing services before we got into content management, and we've used that background to develop our content management system. Today we also have a co-sponsor. Syncro is co-sponsoring this event, so I'll introduce Sarah Draper. Sarah?
Hello everybody and welcome to the webinar. Before Robert and Michael get underway with the presentation, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about us. Syncro was founded in 1998 and is privately held. Over the last few years we've grown significantly, and at the last count there are 36 of us in our 2 offices. Over the years our team has built up significant expertise in XML.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Dr. Robert Porter with us today from Merck Manuals, and also Michael DeFerrari. So we will let you guys take it away.
You can get to my real slide there.
No.
Sorry.
I like the other one.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'm trying. All right. Anyway, I'm Rob Porter. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Merck Manuals. I began my professional career in emergency medicine. I practiced that for 18 years as an academic physician and teacher, and I've been with Merck for 12 years and at the Merck Manuals and editor-in-chief of the Merck Manuals for the last 7. And I've found my true calling. This is work that I love, and it wouldn't go nearly so well without my digital guru, Michael DeFerrari, who sees all, knows all, and I didn't put the last thing, does all.
Right.
He would be the first to remind me. So, Michael, why don't you tell about yourself?
Sure. I've been involved working on the digital publishing side of the Merck Manuals for 12 years. I'm a software engineer background, and I reside in Miami with my family down here and work remotely with the team up in Philadelphia.
Okay. I'm hopeful that a number of people in the audience have heard of the Merck Manuals, and some even familiar with them, but I just want to give a little background on it just so you have a sense of the scope and nature of our product, so you can get a sense for the issues we're facing from a publishing standpoint. The Merck Manual itself has been around since 1899 as a general medical reference book, and we're now in our 19th print edition, which came out in 2011. And even though we're published by Merck, a pharmaceutical company, this is not a pharmaceutical reference. This isn't a drug book. This is a general medical reference book, textbook. We cover basic disease information in essentially all the specialties. We not only medicine and family medicine, we have OBGYN, psychiatry, pediatrics, emergency medicine. We probably cover about 2,500 different diseases. We've never really added them up. There's no quick way to do that. So we're one of the most widely used medical references in the world since that time. Merck also produces the Merck Veterinary Manual, which has been out since 1955, and that's a general veterinary textbook, similar to the way the Merck Manual is for human patients, and that's now in its 10th printing. It's in 2010. One of the things we found, because the manuals have always prided themselves on being very clear, very well written, very easy to understand, that a lot of lay people were using the Merck Manual. So we decided to make it even easier by generating a home version, which is essentially an everyday language translation of the professional book. We started that in 1997, and we now are in our third home edition in 2009. And we try to have those books parallel each other as closely as possible, so they cover the same topics and say the same things about each of those topics and use the same authors. From the success of that, we also decided to do a home version, the veterinary manual. So we have a Merck Manual of Pet Health, which came out in 2007. In addition to the books, of course, we're fully digital. We've been online and have handheld versions of different types since 1999. And in addition to these products that I mentioned that you can see, we've also published a Merck Manual of Geriatrics. We did 3 editions of those between 1990 and 2000, and a home version of that called Merck Manual of Health and Aging, which came out in 2004. Now, those books, we've essentially folded the information into the main Merck Manual, so they're not being renewed anymore, and same with the Pet Manual. That leaves our current line is this. We have a professional edition, the home health handbook, the veterinary manual, and our new home guide to symptoms that just came out last week. I'm putting up the print pages not because we're print-centric, which we're not, but to show you about the size of our content. So you can see we are managing about 10,000 print pages worth of content. And not only are we publishing these every 5 or 6 years, but we are revising monthly. So each chapter is reviewed and updated on a rotating cycle that varies anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So, the more rapidly changing topics we look at every 12 months. So HIV, diabetes, things like that, we look at every 12 months. Most topics, every 18 months is enough, and a few things, how to do a physical exam, how to take a history from patients. That hasn't changed since I was in medical school for these many years, so that doesn't need to be looked at but every 3 years or so. So it's kind of like washing windows on the skyscraper. We start and we work till we're done, and then we start again. And we're publishing probably 4 dozen chapters every month that are changed. Now, not only are we doing this in English, but our professional edition is just about done being translated into 7 languages, and they will all be put up online, and they will all have ongoing updates. So as we update the version in English, it will flow to translators, and then will be updated in the foreign languages. Now, a little bit about our workflow. Our actual process hasn't changed in decades in that we're a peer-reviewed scientific publication, and that means we have external authors. I wish I could say I write the entire content of the Merck Manual myself. I wish I knew a tenth enough to do that, but I don't. So we have external authors, about 800 of them between the human and the vet manuals. Their content is peer-reviewed by national and international experts in each of the fields. After that, it goes through an in-house edit with my staff of myself and the other physician editor and our staff of very experienced medical writers. And we adjust the style and the reading level and what's included. to match the audience, and then it goes out to author final approval from whence it's published. We did this 30 years ago, and we still do it. Now, of course, this is the overall workflow. In detail, there's opportunities for side trips. We can have co-authors. We often have pharmacists review the material. We have internal specialists in multimedia insertion, in table generation, and we can round trip back and forth between myself and the medical writers, between the reviewers and the authors, between myself and the authors. So there's many steps that are taken. Now, back in the dark ages of 2001, when I came to the manual first, we were printing paper documents out and sending them around the country and the world by Federal Express, where our authors would mark on them with pen or pencil, return them back to us. Someone would put them into a Word document and circulate that in the office, or sometimes print it out and circulate that in the office and pass it back and forth through that workflow that I just described until it was done. Then in the early aughts, as I guess they're called, we got a little more modern, and we started emailing Word documents around. So we would email a Word document to an author who would then write on that and email it back to us, and we'd email it to someone else, and they would write on it, and eventually it would become turned into the same print and online documents. Now, as any of you who are involved in this kind of thing are thinking right now, well, that's not the best way to do it. There's a lot of challenges that that creates for you. And Michael's going to talk to you about those. And then the thing that you all came here for is, how did we meet those challenges?
Definitely a lot of challenges. Now, at least when we had a paper document, there was one source that was passed around, and somebody had a hold of it, and somebody was editing it, and they would pass it to the next person, and they had that one source at that time. While we got a little more modern with email, it caused a lot of challenges for us because as you passed around the Word documents of the chapters, you could end up with a situation where the first person here sends the version 1 of the chapter, and then it returns chapter 2, and then this goes on to the next person. Well, they're working with chapter 2, but the original person went back and changed their original document that used to be version 2, and they've made some changes and passed it on, and suddenly you had a duplication of content, and that was always a bear to have to reconcile that content. There was a number of issues that caused us some trouble when we were passing around Word documents. Sometimes chapters were duplicated or changes were lost if you went with one version and missed the changes in the other. There was no version management or the ability to go back, other than digging through your email and trying to do a compare file, to go back and find the previous version of the content. Updates to the products, the final products, what we would do is we would take our Word documents, and then from that we had to get them to the place to go out to all the different channels that we published. So they would go into a publishing software like FrameMaker or Quark or something like that, and there would be a lot of cutting and pasting and rekeying to enter the content there. And as that work went out to be printed, the same Word documents would be sent to maybe one of our handheld developers, who would then begin to work to build that file. And in the review of the print edition, we may find some changes and make those changes in that FrameMaker or Quark file. And those were very difficult to also get those same changes off to the mobile developers who were still working on the older content. So that was very difficult. It's difficult to measure the throughput of how well we're doing with things. There was always errors with transferring the content, as I said, cutting and pasting and putting it into the different things. And because of this process, we couldn't really send the content out to translation until it was complete. And then every translation had to start from scratch. So sometimes the translations, which would take a couple of years at least, wouldn't get to print until 5 or 6 years later, or at least not into any kind of digital format by then. And so you were already ready to print the next edition of the manual, and your translation partners were an edition behind as they released it. So it was very complex, and I won't go through this closely, but this is what it was like. We had our content in FrameMaker, we had our Word documents stored over here. Every format that it went out to was a different format. They'd get print PDFs for printer, Word files would go out to the frame data entry person, frame files would go out to the translator, the website developers would get exported XML from the frame. It was just a complex, error-wrought process and slow because of the complexity.
And every time we wanted to do a chapter again, it had to come out of FrameMaker and be stripped of its tags and get passed around, and then have to go back into FrameMaker and the tags recreated. It was very, very cumbersome.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't have anything that was keeping the XML under the covers, and all the editing was done on top of it. It was all done in Word and then having to be retagged. And if anybody's worked in that before, you know that that is really a speed bump to anything you try to do. So what we needed was a single source of content. We want to have one place where the active current version of the content resides. We wanted to give access to people to be able to get to that one source and work on it, similar to how we did with the one printed piece of paper, but to get it in a editing portal, a cloud, a common format, so that all of our publishing would be done from the same format. We wouldn't have Frame for one and PDF for another and Word for another. So that's what we needed. And we had some specific things that we were looking for when we went for our RFP out to different content management systems. We have a situation where our authors, if you remember the picture of the old guy handing the paper there, some of them do not have much technical expertise. We could not have our system reside on the Merck corporate firewall because of a lot of security reasons for that, and having to jump through a lot of hoops just to get access to that content. So we needed to have an externally hosted content. We needed to have a very well thought out translation management as part of our content, because we are a global product and our translation partners are very, very important to us. We also, at the same time, were being charged with increasing our production while reducing our internal staff and resources. And there was a specific need to pair up the home edition topics, the patient focused content, with the professional topics for healthcare professionals. We wanted to be able to provide either or, depending on who the recipient of the content was. So after our RFP our process, the need was met through a combination of Vasont and the product called Vasont Web Links, and with oXygen XML as our editor. And the solution was our custom version of these three, which is called the Merck Manuals Editing Portal. So what this is it's built on Vasont with web links as our collaborative workflow, and oXygen XML as our editing tool that keeps the XML underneath the covers while people work on it. So the Vasont part brings that single source. It's the back end that holds our content. It allows people to get it and work on the single source. It has versioning. It has the ability to lock content for us. As I mentioned in the introduction, they come from a print background, so they were able to work with our print schema that we use for our own structure. The Vasont tracks every portion of the content with versioning. Every little element or tag it has versions, and you can repeal to the previous versions. It allows us to see how content is nested, that this chapter contains these topics, which contains these paragraphs, which contains this bulleted list. And you can move content around with drag and drop ease. That allowed us to meet the need to pair our home edition and professional edition content more easily. Vasont in the background maintains all the referential integrity. We are highly cross-referenced in our content, and making sure that the content follows the schema validates that. It allows us the ability to have our own workflow. Rob mentioned the workflow that we have where it's passed around to pharma review and physician editor and things like that. We're able to customize our own workflow with Vasont. It allows us to reuse content. So the home symptoms book that we just printed was pulled from the home edition or the home health handbook that we have printed, which is the larger book, and then we pulled out the symptoms for this new product that we're just went to market this week. We also have a robust translation management at the XML level, which allows us any changes that are made in a particular paragraph, just that paragraph will be identified for needing translation. So our translation partners no longer need to start from scratch on page 1 and translate all the way through page 4,000. They can view a chapter, see the change tracking, and make just the changes there. So that's allowing us to do our ongoing translation that way. And finally, we use hosted Vasont. So it's a software as a service, and it has its own login and personalization as part of that, and that keeps us out of the mire of the internal Merck firewall that we had to save ourselves from. So this is a quick just view. Most of you have probably worked with Vasont, but this shows us just how our content is, you know, that we have the different sections, subsections of a content, and everything is nested. And we can move around chapters, rename them. This is actually, behind here, shows the pairing between this coronary artery disease chapter in the home edition, professional edition, and the home edition. So very happy with Vasont as the base tool that we use. Now we couldn't, this is a little bit more complex than our average physician user could be, the old guy with the paper there. So we didn't want people to have to be editing in this, so we worked with Vasont to build the web links product. The web links provides us web access to the chapters through the browser, and it manages the ownership of the chapter as it moves through the workflow. So when Rob is the editor-in-chief and he has it in that stage of the workflow, no one else can edit it. He has ownership of it, and WebLinks manages that for us with Vasont in the back end. It allows us, I'll show you some screenshots in a little bit, but it allows us to give contributors the ability to collaborate by sending messages and putting workflow notes and to work together that way. They can also, though you may not own a chapter, you can view it while it's being worked on from someone else. And so that allows us to see the progress that our authors are doing. If we're wondering, boy, did the author drop off the face of the earth or go work with Doctors Without Borders? We haven't heard from them in a month. We can actually view the chapter and see that they are, in fact, editing it and just slow on finishing and follow up accordingly. We also can see the status of each chapter at a glance, and we manage our user accounts through web links. We also, the web links is, you'll see in a minute, is the launching pad for our oXygen editing tool and allows the ability for our authors, we set up the system now where our authors are actually the caretakers of their particular content, their chapter. And they have the ability, there are scheduled updates, but they have the ability also to on-demand edit. So if a chapter is not currently in an editing cycle, they can request it through web links and have the ability to make changes. If a dosage or a medication was found to be life-threatening, we would want to pull that immediately out of our recommendation of using that medication. And so authors and the editors as well, we have the ability to kind of keep the pulse of modern medicine and make changes if necessary very quickly through on-demand editing. This is what what a particular manuscript page looks like. So we have the title of this one, The Biology of Ear, Nose, and Throat. I'm not the owner at this point. Actually, Dr. Porter is. But I was able to see it. If I clicked on View, I could open it and view the progress there. I could download the chapter if I need to do some more intense editing. This is something that's just available for our internal staff. But we see here you have all the participants who are the caretakers of this particular chapter. Our main author, our editorial board reviewer, the internal staff. And all of these people will see that chapter as one of their chapters that they work on. And we have the workflow here, the ability to add notes, and everybody checks that before they open it. And when you work on the content, when you're done, you can click on this here, and in our workflow, it'll show you the next person that you should send it to, based on the workflow where you are in the workflow. So there's a lot of other helpful things. You can update your profile. Here we'll manage the users for the staff. Get to the list of all the manuscripts that you're responsible for. Each author has maybe 2 or 3 chapters, whereas the staff would have, or an editorial board reviewer would have all of the cardiovascular section, let's say. So that's the way that works. And you have the ability to view the workflow and see the progress that way. So you can see that working through our workflow, went to the author, the reviewer, staff editor, pharma review, and on to physician review. We have a lot of different steps along the way, as Rob mentioned. And we also have the ability, I mentioned, to see the status. And if we, this is from the view of the editorial board reviewer who would be in charge of cardiovascular. These would be the cardiovascular sections that they work with. And they can see, which authors are a little late. A particular author was ill, and so that chapter's on hold, but it was originally due last year. And see which ones just need a little nudge to get the content moving along.
Like I'm in the red.
You're doing much better than, no, sounds good. So then the final thing, the final part of the content was our editing tool itself, and this is we're very happy with this tool. We needed to have a WYSIWYG way of editing XML, maintaining the XML, but have it look like Word to the authors, or very similar to it. We wanted to keep the XML underneath it, so that we didn't have to recode every time. This was just an urgent need. And we tried with some other tools, but oXygen is really the one that has worked the best for us by far. It's the one we've chosen. So it has a Microsoft Word-like view where you can see the content. You can just click in a chapter and edit it. There's no need to work in forms or anything like that. It allows commenting on the features. You can comment along the way and respond to comments. And so our editors and reviewers will ask an author, I think you need to expand the discussion on this particular condition a little bit more in this area, or something like that. And when it goes back to the author, they see that comment and continue to make the content as well as it can be made. We needed we needed thorough change tracking, because these chapters are large and they're very in-depth, and nobody wants to read them from start to finish every time. So to be able to see that these few paragraphs have changed and who they were changed by, when they were changed, was it in response to a comment or not, those kind of things are available to us with oXygen. We can see similar to in Word, where you have different colors for each collaborator, and you can see whether it was deleted or added. oXygen allows us to maintain and protect things at the element level. So if we delete a paragraph, it doesn't just delete the text and the paragraph tags and any notation or unique IDs or anything that was part of that would also disappear. And then when you try to add that paragraph back, you would just get the text. With one tool that we spent a long time trying to get to work, that was what the problem was. We could never do our change tracking and get back to the place where we were. it always needed to be retagged, which is the exact purpose we were trying to replace this with. So to have oXygen provides us easy access to the attributes. If you're familiar with XML, it's not just the textual content, but it's also attributes that identify things about that content. So this is this table should be presented at full width of the page, for instance. Full width or the width would be an attribute. We needed autosave and backups, very important, as people are disconnected or whatever. We didn't want them to lose their access to the content, and we've worked hard over time to make sure that that's working well. And of course, the error checking and validation happens in the background. What was great about oXygen is that it's highly customizable. And so the combination of the web links and oXygen, we're able to have role-specific views, meaning our authors have a more simplified view of the content, whereas the editors or the digital gurus or whatever, I had the ability to get down into the guts of the code. I have a text view or a code view that allows me to see that. Though that's not even presented to our authors. We also had the ability to customize and have special buttons for certain features, to hide buttons that we didn't want, special menu items, and to build helpful dialogues and forms. oXygen is very extensible in that way, and it's allowed us to do that. So here's a few screenshots. This is a basic screen, my little sample chapter here. And as you can see, it's got icons that people are pretty much used to seeing. You've got your print icons and the bold, italics, superscript, subscript, bulleted lists, new paragraph, table features and stuff. And then there's a few that we have to have some little bit of heads up to our authors of how to use. This particular set here is how the commenting works. And you have the ability to place your text in the content, sweep what you want to comment about, and either choose this button here or right-click and add a comment. And then you have the ability now to right-click on a comment and respond to it. And you can show the entire thread. If this is a lot of back and forth about a particular thing, you can see it in an easy-to-use thread view. So the commenting has been good. You can see this was, I wrote sometimes in here. This was part of the change tracking. So it's worked well with the both the commenting and the change tracking. But over the course of time, as I said, no one wants to read the entire chapter necessarily from top to bottom every time to try to guess what the changes were. You want, as an editor especially, to say, okay, what do they change? Oh, they're adding sometimes. Let me think about that. Do I approve that? Yes or no? You don't want to have to read and try and guess. Did that used to say sometimes? I don't remember. So showing the change tracking is helpful, but you also want to have the ability to read it as it's going to be. And if you click on this combination of buttons here, this button shows as though all changes were accepted. And this is to hide or show the comments. And so now, this is particular something that our Ed Board reviewers will do. They will hide all the features and read it from scratch as an expert, and then turn on those features and see what was responded to. So it's a way of you can then print preview and print a clean version of the chapter for review or things like that. So that's been very helpful. And then finally, this is an example of one of our custom buttons that we added. We have a lot of multimedia throughout our online content, and you have the ability to add different types of multimedia, different types of tables or figures, and this is a custom dialog that allows us to then pull the actual and embed the actual photo that our multimedia editor can then watch and review. So this is just an internal a tool that we've built for ourselves that's been very, very helpful. So the results of what we had in this work, and it's been something that we got our basic content features going in 2010, and then have been adding to it, fine-tuning it over time. But the main thing that we got out of all of this is simplicity. You'll remember that this was our process before. with all of the different types of content, different format, stuff needing to be recoded, content changes lost between whatever. Well, this is what our solution looks like now. Everything is stored in Vasont. All of our users have access to this XML, authors, editors, reviewers. They make their changes, then they update it. And all of our channels receive the XML and the art, and everything is all stored within Vasont. They all receive that content for print, web, and mobile development. And they transform that XML to build the product. And then any corrections that are noticed in that process are cycled back, and the changes made in one place. You don't have to go out and find, oh, we forgot to make it here. Did you make it there? Oh, I'll have to email them. They didn't get that. Oh, it's not on the website. We got to change that immediately. Now it comes back. It's changed in one place, and the next person who publishes gets that new content that way. So simplicity is the main result that we have. The others are ease of use. This has been a lot easier than email and FedExing content. The speed to publish, because our content has greatly reduced errors, there's no need to rekey. We are actually publishing more than 3 times faster than we were in the past. We can measure that based on the number of chapters going through, being published to the web. We have the ability to track at every workflow stage the how long it stayed with the certain features. We just had our editorial board meeting, and we were able to break it down by author and ed board member to show how many days on average chapters stayed with them. Was it below the threshold that we want or not? Really, really helpful things. Because we can publish faster, we're able to have more products. We license our content out to other products now. We've built an EHR product. We have many things that we're doing with the content that we weren't before when we were just doing print and maybe online. The Q&A process, as I showed in the last slide, the ability to receive comments and change them right away is a lot easier than it ever was. We have the ability to version content and roll back something if something was published in error. So we're not suddenly in a situation where we need to panic. The new content wasn't supposed to go live on the web. Oh no, what do? We have to go re-edit it by hand and take it apart and put it back together. We can just roll it back and publish it immediately. We have what we call, at this point, simultaneous +6 translation, is that we can make any changes that we make to the content at the element level will be sent out to our translation partners. And we have worked very hard this year to improve our translation schema to make it even easier for the partners. So they will be able to see just the changes that were made in a paragraph, and to see whether, even if in the language, if the change in the words was slight, just another way to say in regards to or regarding, if it means the same in that language, they have the option to not retranslate that, but fold back to the previous translation because it hasn't changed the meaning in the text. So we're at this point, we are going to be going out as soon as our final translations finish. I did see my friend Alejandro on the line, and Alejandro was first and worked in oXygen and was the first in Spanish to the first translation finished. So he did excellent. They're already on their way, published with that. What the future holds is that once all the translations are back, and we're still waiting on China and Russia, we will then put out the next translation iteration and give our translation partners 6 months to make the changes. And we believe that with this new features we've made with Vasont, we'll have the ability to shorten that time. So this will become simultaneous +4, or maybe even quarterly simultaneous +3 months. So the final few things is that it's better use of the project management. We can track the projects, we can track our users and see when they are editing and help them in any difficulties that they may have. And the final goal, of course, was that we had one source accessible by all. Now, there still are a few changes and challenges. We do have the occasional author who will come by and print out his or her chapter and drop it off in a box outside the front door of the office. We have those who wish we were still working in Word. I think if I had to say, just the only challenge that we've faced technically has been with Java. That the oXygen XML Editor is built as a Java applet, and in this past year there was a security breach in Java which required everyone to reinstall new versions and to keep their version up to date to make sure there was no security issues. And that has required authors who said, it was working before and now it's asking me to upgrade again. Do I need to or not? You know, it's been a little bit of back and forth with that. No fault of oXygen, just the problem with Java. So even with the minor changes, we are able to publish, minor challenges, we're still able to publish quicker, to manage our content and our users. We're just happy overall with it. And so in the end, I'd have to say we got exactly what we wanted. And when we were evaluating all of our, we cast a wide net to a lot of different content management systems. And when we've gotten down to the final 4, we worked with a consultant who's well-versed in the different systems. And there's a quote that she said off the side that really struck us. She said, there are no unhappy Vasont customers. In all of our references that we reviewed, we had people who had switched from one content management system to another, but nobody that we interviewed had switched from Vasont. And that's really what sold us. And we'd have to say we're very happy with how the system has gone, and the support that we get. The user support is customer support is fantastic. So I guess we're at about 11:40 here, right on time. So if there are any questions, or if the staff has anything that they want to review, we will take your questions. I'll pass it back to you, Suzanne.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions, and while we give people a few seconds to type in additional questions, I did want to mention that we have a webinar coming up with Ann Rockley on Thursday where she's going to talk about measuring metrics for a component content management system. That's at 1 o'clock Eastern Time this coming Thursday on Halloween. So we'd be happy if you join us for that as well. A couple of quick questions.
Metrics can be scary.
Right, absolutely, and hard to figure out. So she's going to give some good advice on that. Can you tell us how many translations you use on your products?
Well, we actually have 10 translations currently in the system. We're in but not all of those are in the ongoing translation management. So 10 of I'm talking about the professional edition. There are 3 of the home edition, and there are 2 currently of the veterinary edition. There are a full 17 languages that the content is translated into, but not all of them have been brought into the into our XML system. The main 7 that we're working on right now are Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Chinese, Russian, and German. And,
okay. And also, can you speak a little bit to the authors and reviewers that you have? Where are they located and the number that you manage?
Rob, you want to take that?
Yeah, we have about 400 for the human products and another 400 for the veterinary products. The human authors and reviewers are concentrated mainly in the English-speaking world, the bulk in the U.S. and Canada, but some in New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. The veterinary team is a bit more international. I don't know how many different countries they're involved with, but that's one of the things with that many authors. It really needed to be a simple system with a pretty low learning curve. There's a lot of editing tools and platforms that work very well for a tight-knit organization where you can train everyone up, to a T, and they can do amazing things. But we needed something that can be used by a busy, easily annoyed older physician, such as myself.
Okay. You had mentioned the symptoms books that you just recently published. How long did it take to create that from the existing content you had in the database?
Well, we actually rewrote that content for the book, and we managed that in a bit over a year, was it, Michael? Karen's online listening. She would know. So we actually redid it for that as part of the book upgrade. The actual porting it out, Michael, that was very quick.
Yeah, so yeah, that was very quick. We were just able to pull the topics that were, what Rob is saying is we reformatted, rewrote that content as part of the home edition product with the eye towards having it be its own standalone product. And then we were able to pull those chapters very easily with our book map to build that other manual. There was, I mean, I think the only hiccup that we ran into is that because this was part of a larger content, we have throughout our XML the ability to exclude certain things based on the channel. So we wouldn't have a video go to print, a video reference go to print. And this is something that we have on our deck to change in the future, is that because our work is highly cross-referenced, the only struggle we ran into is when we pulled out those chapters, there were a lot of cross-references out to other chapters that were not part of this new book. And we didn't have in place the ability to exclude those cross-references, you know, before this particular type of printing channel. So that'll be changed in the future, and we plan to, working with our mobile app developer for that content, any changes that are made to those chapters that have those symptoms in them will then update the mobile app for the home symptoms, and we'll be sending the XML you know, quarterly out to our mobile app developers for that way. So the changes ongoing to the content will only need to be made in one place.
Okay. And I believe you mentioned throughout the presentation that you're using a custom XML DTD. Is that correct?
Yes, the one we've had for a long time. So,
okay.
So not DITA. Our content was already very entrenched in our current DTD and schema. We did look at what it would take to get the content out of that into DITA. We could potentially do that in the future, but there wasn't a great return for us, particularly by doing that immediately. So the way we do it now, because it's written as chapters that are a cohesive whole instead of topics, we needed to keep it in our current DTD. I believe you guys have a DITA install or whatever for this, true? Is that?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Do you maintain style sheets in the oXygen for the oXygen preview?
Us ourselves?
Yes.
We worked, when we installed it, we worked with some of the programmers at Vasont to set up the style sheet to our liking. We do have the ability to do that. We also make this author view, including the style sheets, available to our translation partners so that they can use a standalone version of oXygen. If they're not accessing through web links, they can use a standalone desktop install version of oXygen, but still have all of the features that we've built. So we have the ability to make some changes there in the standalone, but at this point we haven't had the need really to change the style sheet much. And when we have, it's been a simple request from the Vasont team to change it.
Okay. Are the edits stored in the cloud while a chapter is checked out, or are they stored locally, requiring check-in to be available to others?
They are stored in the cloud, so that's a very important part. So it requires this auto-save or the ability to make sure that people save and save the chapter. Even if it's checked out to the person and their computer is off, they still have the checkout for it. It's still in that workflow state. But at the time, it's out there, and so anybody can view that content as it's being worked on. You can see the most recent save, and the autosave is set for every 5 minutes. So anybody can view that content, open it, and see the changes as they're, not exactly as they're being edited, but within 5 minutes of them being edited. We do have the ability, I mentioned that download a chapter, and we don't make that feature available to our authors because we don't want to end up with the same thing where I downloaded a chapter and I'm working on it, somebody else downloaded a chapter and they're working on it, and then we have to reconcile the two. So the main thing that we want to do is have one place where the source resides and one set of content that's being worked on, and so that's why it resides in the cloud for us.
Okay. How long does it take someone with average computer skills to become familiar with and comfortable with using the system?
Basic editing, word editing, is almost instantaneous. I don't know if Michael can flip through to the standard view, but it really looks like a word screen. Building tables and entering multimedia is a bit more challenging, so we pretty much don't expect our authors to be able to do that. We end up doing that in-house, and that takes a little bit of effort, but it takes time to learn how to build tables in Word. So, yeah.
Okay.
And if you hover over any of these buttons, it'll tell you what the feature means. So that's been very helpful. And we have some amount of help training that we provide our authors, and we're working on expanding that as well. So that we want it to be easy. We don't want it to be something. We want it to be intuitive, and we're working hard in that direction to make sure that it's not a challenge. I think other than the occasional Java needing to reinstall Java or trouble with that, we really haven't had necessarily trouble with the features. Sometimes there's a question about bullets, but other than that, I would think it's been fairly straightforward.
Okay.
My editors would know.
How does non-XML get into Vasont?
So you mean like a video and things like that?
Or like a Word file, for example.
So if you had a Word file, well, Vasont has the ability to store Word files, and we in fact have a system that stores our contracts as Word files. It stores them as a blob within binary large object within the Vasont database there. But if it's textual content, within Vasont, you create the element for it and add it that way. If it is multimedia content, we do have a collection of all of our multimedia. We have a collection for our photos and one for videos and one for illustrations and animations and all the different things that make up this content. And then we have video refs or photo refs or things like that. So from the textual XML, it has a reference to that content. And when we extract a chapter, it pulls the content that's referenced as well. So if we were providing a chapter separately to someone, or when we extract the content for publishing, it'll pull all of the multimedia that needs to be published at that time. And if something in the multimedia collection is no longer referenced, is not being used, it doesn't pull that. It doesn't send that. It leaves that in that collection, or if something new that hasn't been fully added yet. So we do have separate collections within the Vasont side of things.
And that means that our different products can all call on the same picture, for example. So we can include a picture. We often do. We put the same picture in the home and the professional version, and there's no issue of which is the original one, who has the right caption, which one has the right title. They can, they live in their own collection.
Okay. For your commercially printed books, what format do you send to the print vendor?
We have have developed a way to use this XML and format it for Adobe InDesign. So this is a process we've been working on throughout the year with our translation partners. We are in a little bit of a hiatus as far as print goes, but we're primarily working with InDesign. For the home symptoms book, because the automatic InDesign process wasn't in place yet, we provided the XML for our compositor, who used to be the person who worked with our, that team used to be the ones who worked with our FrameMaker and input and did all the tagging and everything. They're very familiar with InDesign, and they knew our XML well. And so by giving them our XML, they were able to format it in InDesign for print. So that's what we're primarily using is InDesign, and we now have the ability to build the manual that needs only minor compositing before it's ready to go to print. So we do have that tool in place now. So Alejandro, next time we'll be ready for you.
Okay. Does the ownership feature in web links work with pieces of shared content or content that is used in multiple chapters?
I'm
I don't know if I understand.
not sure I follow that. There's each content piece is unique, so that there is one home edition chapter on heart failure, and the ownership is equally unique. It can only reside with one person at any given time. I'm not sure if that was a question.
Okay.
If there's shared content between the two, in the example with our home symptoms book, when someone is updating a home health handbook chapter that has a symptoms chapter within it, they then have the ownership of that chapter. What it is that when it's on web links, it's actually a lock and an extract, a copy of the content. And then the access to that content as it exists on web links is where we talk about ownership. So in that particular, in our case, the updates are done on that locked copy of the content with specific ownership rights. And then when it's finished, the final step is to import the content as it's gone through all the steps and received all the approvals and everything, is to import that content back into Vasont and replace the chapter that was there at the time.
Okay. Our content is not in XML, and it is stored, or it is located in various sources. How easy would it be to upload this to Vasont? What format would it need to be in? I think I can speak to that a little bit. We can store content in several ways. Of course, XML is the primary way that we get the most reuse out of content. But as they mentioned before, you can also store documents in the system. For example, if you have Word documents or PDF files, you can also store those in the system and use it as a document management system until you're ready to convert that over to XML and store it as components within Vasont. The next question, when linked material is edited, what mechanism ensures that the links do not become broken if material is deleted?
On our import back into the system, back into Vasont, that's where the referential integrity is managed. And so anything that was a target of another link and that link is no longer there, where the reference was, if it's pointing to something that has been deleted while it was out on web links on the portal, that link will show as broken. And our executive editor will go through, and there's probably 15 or so links per cycle that she'll have to readjust. So we do move our content quite a bit, and we are very highly cross-referenced. So we run into this all the time, but it's all identified for us, and we have the ability to relink to the proper place, or if there is a discussion that was originally referenced is no longer in the content at all, it shows where the link is broken, and you just can make the choice to editorially to remove that cross-reference.
Okay. Sarah, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is actually more of a comment and a little piece of information that might be valuable for everyone regarding oXygen, regarding your HTML5 plus JavaScript version that's coming out next year. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
This is supposed to be secret, but it's coming out in November. So if anybody's going to Europe, then it will be unveiled there.
Okay. Very good.
And
I think
we're excited about that. If that's, as I mentioned, really the only issue that we have that has been the Java, Java not upholding their end of the bargain. So we're looking forward to testing and seeing if that's something that we can switch to as well.
Right. So that should help with working on mobile devices and desktops. Very good. Well, we're right up against the hour. So we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and hopefully we will see you on Thursday with our webinar with Ann Rockley on CMS metrics. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.